Hello, everyone, and welcome to session 13, the Community Engagement Group meeting. This session is being recorded, and moderating our session and our flash talks today is Kristin Terrill and Lily Compton from Iowa State University. My name is Teri Green. I'll be your moderator for the next 50 minutes. And a quick reminder before we begin, make sure that if you're not speaking, you have your audio muted. And then we're going to be treated to a series of community flash talks. So there won't be time in between to ask questions, but Lily and Kristin will reserve time at the very end for any questions. And those can also be entered into the chat as you're viewing the flash talks. Thank you again for joining us. I'll turn it over to Kristin and Lily.
Thanks, Teri. And I can tell it's I think, fourth moderator one for you because it's me and Ruth this time. Normally, Lily and I go together and come as a pair, but for this one,
I am
actually
so
partnering
sorry.
up with Ruth. That's all right. So
I was just copy and pasting.
No, I know, and it's been all day too, so very easy to make a mistake. But Ruth and I have been coordinating the community engagement group this year. We took it over from the very wonderful Emily Wookner, who was doing it prior. And so the community engagement group is an offshoot of the USETDA, the Electronic Thesis and Dissertation Association. And what it is just a group of ETD administrators from various parts of their institutions. We get together once every couple of months and have a somewhat structured conversation on usually Zoom, although that's subject to change, I suppose, depending on what we can use for free from our institutions. And we get to know each other and we talk about what's going on with our work and sometimes also things outside of work. We were just chatting about the tea talk that Ruth gave last spring. So it's very fun to get together and we get to know, we just kind of get outside of our silos in a very good and connecting way. So we decided as a group this year that we would submit a flash talk session to the USETDA conference, and it was accepted, of course. And so the presenters for this session are people from the community engagement group, or possibly maybe some future members of the community engagement group. And it's just going to be quick snaps of what's going on with us and our work as ETD administrators. So each speaker will introduce themselves, their name, their position, and their institution, and then do their flash talk while Ruth runs the slideshow. So when it's your turn, be sure to let Ruth know when it's time to switch slides, and we'll save time by not having to switch who's sharing the screen. If time permits, at the end, we will have 5 minutes for discussion and questions and answers. So, all right, let's get started with the flash talks.
Wonderful. And you're perfect on time, Kristin. And the first one we will have is from Elizabeth McDonald, University of Memphis Libraries. And just be cautious about time. I will be giving a firm reminder at the 4:30 or 5-minute mark, and we will move on to the next. So you have 5 minutes, Liz. Let's get it started.
Okay, well, thank you. And you see the topic, so we can go on to the next slide. I am a special projects cataloger at the University of Memphis. I have worked with ETDs since we migrated from print to ETDs. And over the course of that, I became aware, I'm involved in cataloging the ETDs of issues that have come up with students and embargoes. And I happened to be in a committee meeting on a different subject with the person who does our dissertation writers workshop, which is something we've been doing for several years. And I mentioned to her my deep concerns about embargoes and that students need to understand them, and really buttonholed her about it. And about 2 days later, I got an invitation to, why don't you present to us about this? So I said, sure. And then I did my research. I started off with what I knew about ETDs and particularly what I'd seen students embargo for. And then I went out and researched websites in order to find out what other institutions were talking about their embargoes. And then, of course, being a librarian, I did a quick search. And I have got a link to an article down below, which did a really nice presentation of all the study of all the different embargo reasons they had encountered in their research. So then my goals for the presentation was for students to come to an understanding of what their options were, what open access meant, and what embargoes meant. Furthermore, I wanted them to understand when they might want to consider doing an embargo, because I think there was a lot of confusion about that. So I talked about the issues in particular that are here regarding patents, grants and funding, and whether they have a non-disclosure account, whether they're working with proprietary information, ethical privacy issues, and that's just to name the primary ones I talked about. And the most important thing I always said to them in every instance, more than once throughout the presentation, is talk to your advisors, because they know, particularly with publications, they know, whoopsie, something went security, safety as well. But in terms of publications, they know what their disciplines are likely to accept and not accept in terms of this. With regards to the other things, they should know whether your research is impinging on any of these. And so that was one of the main things. The next thing I went through is how you actually set an embargo. We use the ETD administrator. And so I actually use screenshots to show them this is where the embargo feature is in it. And not only that, but if you don't want to do 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years, this is how you work with it to get it to do permanent embargo, or in order to set a different embargo year. I also talk about if they want to change their embargo, and the 2 ways that can be done prior to the ETD administrator being released to ProQuest, and then what happens afterward, and a shout out to the changes that are coming with that. And we're looking at changing that simply because they've been coming in and going out through all different people, and we're trying to set a specific thing for our institutional repository. The feedback I have had on this has been very positive. The students were unaware. They were happy to get this information. I've done this twice. I did this in February of 2024, and then I did it again in this past August. Going forward, I'm going to expand on, based on what the students' questions were, on what it means and what examples are of all the different types. When I did it, I had a separate screen on patents because that's been a big issue. But I'm also going to do separate screens on the rest of them because I think it makes more sense to the students if I do that. We're talking about producing it as a webinar, and then we're also talking about getting an embargo page on the dissertation writers workshop. And I think I've motor mouthed as fast as I can.
You did wonderful, Liz. You were able to put in a lot of information within the time limit. Bravo. You've set a good tone for our next speaker, Catherine Rodolk from University Calgary. Catherine, it's your turn.
Hey, hi. Can you get, yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. I am not part of this community engagement group, and I'm not an ETD administrator. I'm a librarian at the University of Calgary. Over the last 2 years, I've been working with a multidisciplinary research team on investigating our support needs for graduate students and supervisors pursuing non-traditional thesis pathways. Our team was made up of a faculty member from Brooklyn School of Education, our education faculty, 4 librarians, 2 subject librarians, a research support librarian, and myself as a repository librarian, and 2 graduate students. Our project consisted of a survey to faculty and graduate students to understand their current thinking about non-traditional theses, for or against, what they think about when they hear that term, who's pursuing them on campus, why are they pursuing them, and how are they going about doing that. We especially wanted to know what supports and barriers they were encountering if they were trying to pursue those pathways. Then we held focus groups with faculty, supervisors, graduate students as separate kind of focus groups to dig deeper into the barriers that we were hearing about in the survey, needs, and just the commitment themes, like why people were committed to these pathways. What we saw was a rising interest from both, or what we are seeing on campus is just a rising interest in non-traditional forms of research in general. In the repository area, we've been accepting non-traditional theses for a long time, like since I started in 2014. But every single time we do receive a non-traditional form, it's kind of a big deal. Like a lot of people get involved, there's a meeting, lots of discussion. And it's not because we can't support them, but because it's unclear how we can support them and that we do support non-traditional work. And we found that validated with the survey and focus group, that undefined process, the lack of documentation is a continued barrier just to pursuing a path. And both our faculty and students aren't finding the supports when they are looking for them. What makes a difference is early, sustained encouragement, clear messaging, and that these theses are accepted, they're valid, and we need to create better communities and connections so students don't feel isolated during these processes. Also, these transdisciplinary connections through community practice is going to be key because what we also heard was people were doing maybe novel methodologies in one area, but it wouldn't be novel in another. So connecting those different disciplines is really important to encourage that. Next slide. So coming from the library, I like to think about the library's role and impact. When students are looking for support, they do turn to the library. And that's regardless of discipline. We built a non-traditional thesis LibGuide, of course. You have to build a LibGuide to highlight local resources that we have here or exemplar kind of research for non-traditional pathways along the thesis life cycle for students pursuing those paths. Our subject librarians are very key in surfacing examples and raising awareness of description, discovery, archiving, preservation support that we provide already, but in our functional areas, in our repository areas. We're continuing to work on key messages and awareness of non-traditional thesis support so that students can get the encouragement they need across our library. Our repository needs richer description so students can discover non-traditional work across disciplines. So that looks like making sure that that form is documented in metadata, the methodologies are documented, and that the file name and description is documented so that people can discover the non-traditional forms. And finally, through proactive outreach, we really want to see students earlier who are considering non-traditional formats so that we can recommend sustainable platforms. We will take anything, but it makes it easier if we know that we can sustain whatever format is going to come in. Thank you so much to my investigators on this project. And for all of us, this wasn't about making non-traditional theses the new norm on campus, but it was making sure that it's a viable and validated way to put out their research. Thank you.
You are right on time, Catherine. Thank you so much for your overview for your talk. Thank you. Next up, we have Kim Fleshman from Bowling Green State University Grad College. Kim, it's your turn.
Can you bring up my slide? Thank you. And Catherine, please see me because I am trying to publish a paper about non-traditionals right now, actually. So I've been talking about that for a few years. So I want to talk about AI and copyright, and I guess I want to start this off with, I'm Kim Fleshman. I work for Bowling Green State University in the Graduate College, and I am not an attorney. So please consult this link, this report, and other information from the U.S. Copyright Office to move forward based on what you learn and you determine there. You might want to consult an attorney or perhaps your campus's Office of General Counsel to get some more information. But I wanted to bring this up because it's becoming more and more common that students are asking about the use of AI in their theses and dissertations. Every time we find alt text that says AI generated, we do not allow it, and instead we send it back and make the student describe the figure. But that's not addressing Grammarly or ideation or anything else out there about what could be used in AI. So at BGSU, advisors or committee chairs are responsible for checking for AI before it gets to us. And the committee is responsible to review the document and approve it. So I'm not sure how it goes at your university, but I'd love to hear about that later. And our templates have a copyright statement that most students do not take out. And so from what this is saying from the US Copyrights Office, as long as it has human generated content, they can still leave that copyright statement in, you know, because there has to be a certain portion of creativity, of course, that's involved. So I just kind of wanted to see what people thought about that. And then I wanted to bring up, if you could bring up my next slide, please. I'm sure there's a whole thing missing there. Can I share my screen?
Sure, please share your screen.
That should have a black background, so I apologize. So can everybody see this? Give me a thumbs up if you great. So we all know about ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot and Gemini and Grammarly. Everybody's been talking about a lot of that through this conference. But what about other platforms that are out there that are relatively inexpensive and would make AI harder to detect? I've put links in here. So Sudowrite, for example, is a creative writing tool. It's good at replicating human emotion. It's great for brainstorming too, and it only costs $10 a month if you want to get 30,000 words out of it, 22 for 90,000 words, and 100 for 300,000 words. There's Jasper AI. It's fast. It's based on GPT-3. It can translate and copy into more than 25 different languages. It integrates with Google Docs, Chrome, and claims to produce plagiarism-free content. PaperPal is free. It does not even require a credit card. Now there is a paid version, but it's still $6.90 a month, pretty affordable. Notion AI is usually $15 a month. It is marketed as being your teammate with writing. It's great for writing first drafts, generating lists. It edits grammar and syntax. It can also summarize long documents for you. Quillbot claims to be an AI that writes with you again and not for you. It paraphrases things. It checks for grammar. It has an AI detector in it. It has an AI humanizer. It translates things and summarizes things. If you look at WordTune, it is a paraphrasing tool and reading and writing assistant that, like Grammarly, can correct your spelling and your grammar. It's also includes the ability to summarize documents, websites, YouTube videos. You can use it free also without a credit card, but there is a paid version again for $13.99 a month. And then there's several more tools I'm not going to have enough time to really cover, but I just wanted to say, you know, can these be used ethically? I guess it's your definition of ethically. Brainstorming, certainly, I think most people are pretty good and comfortable with using AI for brainstorming. Streamlining a literature review, grammar checks, data analysis, content refinement. I don't know, where's the line, right? I think our universities have to start talking about where we're going to set that line. Certainly, we don't want to replace critical thinking or original research. And then I did include several links for AI policies that I found at other universities if you wanted to look at those. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Kim. You really nailed the time too. And the topic is so interesting, and I think it's worth a session on its own as well. So next up, we have us. Kristin and I are going to talk about Level Up grant writing as academic professionalization.
Do you mind taking over this one and I'll do the next one?
Absolutely. This one, last time we shared, we hosted a session on grant writing, and the topic came up when we first discussed it in our planning session. I think our focus was career development, and we wanted different facets that goes into it. And luckily, I think both Kristin and I had been involved in in some initial grant writing work, and then we have been heavily engaged in different kinds of mechanisms in the grant writing. So we thought, why not we host a session on grant writing together? So there we went. We had this beautiful agenda laid out, which composed of the three components: finding funding, applying for funding, and managing funding. Although these are short titles, there's a lot that goes into it. For funding, Kristin gave a really good overview of where to look. So these are the places, the databases that we can actually do a quantitative search on what's out there if you're looking to apply for grants. And then there are also professional societies that could constantly give out these information. For example, USETDA, we have in-house, we have some good information out there, and there's also Teach Access, Council of Graduate Schools. So all of this, if you're involved in those, you can get information on grant opportunities. And a lot of things that a lot of times you don't want to ignore in your own resource, which is your own institution. So I think for both Kristin and I, we actually applied for internal grants. So for our institution and for Ohio University, there is specific guidelines how you want to apply for this specific grant. What is it used for, and what you want to achieve out of that. So for a specific institution, the resources might be housed in staff council, union, university library, the provost office, Center for Excellence, discipline-specific groups as well. And next up is for applying for funding. So when we're looking at funding proposals, they list out the eligibility criteria. Of course, it's like submitting an application for anything. You kind of need to check those boxes. And then a lot of them have very competitive criteria. And sometimes I think for this application process, it's kind of writing a compelling story to persuade your funders why they should fund you. So you should really stand out in your planning and your persuasive abilities. And a lot of times presenting with the right numbers, sometimes the return of investment helps, and sometimes the detailed plan of the impact and also the impact that you are going to bring out of this C grant would be very beneficial as well. At the same time, we should look at the format of this application, how many words they want, when it's the deadline, and things like that. Timeline is always something that we want to stress about because, it's a crucial component whether you can submit everything on time, and then your entire planning of the timeline also matters. And the last one is managing the funding. So I think one of the takeaways was to establish a proposed budget and working with institutional accounting and purchasing coordinators, and track all the expenses as you go, and also keep track of deliverables quantitatively. And at the end, we usually write a report to follow up on the outline of the application. So I think that is all. I think I'm keeping track of my own time, and it's 7:05 and we're right here. All right, thank you. Next up, we have Larry, who is not here, but he shared a video of the recording that he did. So we're going to play it here. Larry is from the University of Tennessee.
Hi, folks. This is Larry Tagg, the Assistant Dean for Academic Affairs.
I'm not sure if you could hear the sound, so I'm going
We
to do
could,
it one
yeah.
more time. Oh, okay.
The sound was
perfect.
working, Ruth.
Good. Perfect. Thank you.
Affairs and Director of the ETD program for the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in the College of Graduate Health Sciences. What I want to talk about today is the potential for authorship falsification in ETDs when we actually place articles in chapters rather than in appendices. Now, we talked about this several years ago in a USETDA conference in 2022. And I'm sure you can, what we did at that time, or what our students did, is they provided summaries of an article rather than the actual article in a chapter. So they were permitted to, or encouraged to, place the summary in the article, and I have one here as an example. This student actually placed this article in chapter 2. They have an introduction with a few references in here. They have a link to the actual article and the credits given down there as needed. And then they have the summary, and then they have a conclusion. And that only took 5 pages. So it took very little time for the student to actually generate that information for that entire article, okay? But what it does is it isolates the student's voice to the front matter and the body of the ETD itself. There is no pollution from other multi-authors in this content in this way. And we think that's important because the authorship on our ETDs, at least, is a single author. But in the past 3 years since this was presented, a lot of things have happened. And the most important thing that's happened is open access. The number of open access journals worldwide is now 22,000, okay? Many of those are US-based publishers, and they include a lot of the kind of publications that we use in the biomedical sciences. The reason this is important is because they can link directly to the links that are provided in the article to journals, to journal figures and tables back into their own ETD and the summary of their ETD. And I had a question to ask of AI about that, and I asked that question, is it going to be permissible for students to do this, to use those links directly from those articles back in their own summary of their ETD? And the answer was absolutely. In fact, they encourage it for the most part to use those links, okay? And it's important to realize that given the attribute is CC BY for Creative Commons, that means that the student or anybody that reads that article can use any part of it any way they want to, as long as they give the proper attributes, okay? And they give an example here in the information they got from the AI. And the only thing you got to be careful about is that you don't accidentally grab a hold of a third-party figure. But most of the time, it's very clearly indicated if it happens to be a third-party figure, at least in PLOS, and some of the other journals are real careful about that. Now, how does this actually work? Well, if we look at an article from PLOS, for example, and I'm just going to pick one out here, not one that we've actually used, but when you get to a table or figure, you're going to see a DOI, and you see that DOI link down here. That links directly to that figure itself and the legend that goes with that figure. And so the student can take that link back to their own thesis or dissertation and use that link in their own summary, okay? What does that do? Why is that so important? Because number one, unless the student absolutely wants to have that information in the appendix that's represented by that summary, they don't even have to put it in there, because they're going to give not only the credit for the figure, that summary is going to have the links to the actual article and the permissions for using that article in the summary. Okay? So it's not necessary for them to actually reproduce it unless they want to in the appendix, because the reader can get back to the original article, which is open access, and they've got the figures right there, handy for them right there in the ETD itself. So they don't have to go back to the whole article. They can just click on that and the figure pops up. The advantage of that is that the size of the ETD becomes much smaller, because we're not dealing with all those enormous figures in my business that we have to deal with, the electron micrographs and so forth. So it's very important. So we think this is something everybody really should think about applying to their own thesis and dissertation program. Thanks.
Great. I had to speed it up at the end because he was short on time. So thank you, Larry, for your engaging talk. And next up, we have Kristin to talk about open resources at Iowa State.
So in yesterday's talk, Lillian, Megan, and I talked about an upcoming open educational resource, and I just wanted to raise everyone's awareness to a few other great resources in Iowa State's digital press. So can you go to the next slide, Ruth, please? One of them that came out kind of recently is called A Guide to Writing the Statement of Purpose for Graduate School Applications. This is a data-driven study on statements of purpose for graduate school, and she went through and really laid out what goes into a statement of purpose and how to write a very effective one. That's free. It's available online through Iowa State University. And the next one is called Oral Communication for Non-Native Speakers of English. At Iowa State, we have quite a few international student teaching assistants, and many of them come to the Center for Communication Excellence for help with their speaking skill development. And some of our consultants and Lily Compton, my colleague, put together this free ebook that provides a lot of the wisdom that has been developed at the CCE to help with effective oral communication. Let's go to the next one. This is Modern Information Technologies in Scientific Research and Educational Activities. This is one of the ebooks that I haven't read, but I had to pop it in here specifically because it talks about what was it? Informatization of the work of graduate students. I just thought somebody in the USETDA would need to know that this book exists. It's not me, but somebody in this room does know what that means. And I think you should know that this book is out there. Let's go to the next slide. This is Preparing to Publish by my colleagues, Sarah Huffman, my major professor, Elena Kotos, and my friend and colleague, Kimberly Becker. It's all about writing research articles, and it goes deep into the weeds. It's, again, data-driven on what it takes to make a persuasive argument about your introduction, your methods, your results, and your discussion conclusion. So it's very, very specific advice on how to write a research article that will get published. Let's go to the next one. This is Oral Communication for Non-Native Speakers of English. Again, kind of in the same vein, but this one gets a little bit more into the linguistic side of oral communication, focusing on listening, speaking, lexico, grammar, pragmatics, and pronunciation. And then we have one more, it looks like. Yes, the OER Starter Kit. This was by my colleague, Abby Elder. You know that Lillian, Megan, and I have written an OER now, and we've had actually a wonderful experience, and it's a good way to get your knowledge out there in a place where people can really access it. So if you would like to put your wisdom into an OER, this OER Starter Kit is, as you would imagine, a good place to start. And that's what I want you all to know.
Perfect. And you're great on time, Kristin. Thank you for sharing all of these wonderful resources. Next up, we are going to invite Mamit Kaur to talk about Talk Visual Mind AI.
Hello to everyone. Am I audible, ma'am? Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
wonderful.
Okay. Next slide, please. Yeah. While ETDs have democratized access to knowledge, the format itself often remains a digital replica of a paper document, inheriting its limitations. Our scholars are still struggling with these fundamental issues. This isn't just another chatbot. Visual Mind AI, true innovation in its flexibility, meeting the user where they are, whether they think in words or in visuals. Next slide. Yeah. This adaptability is key. A student can start with a chat to brainstorm, generate a mind map, to structure their thoughts, and then use chat again to drill down into specific sections. Now a comprehensive research suite. It is a full ecosystem from processing text and video to providing tailored support and enabling collaboration. It supports the entire research life cycles. Next slide, please. The application is not uniform in humanities. Our AI supports the narrative. In STEM, it supports the process. But both require human oversight, the critic in humanities and the verifier in STEM. The path forward, priorities for responsible integration. This one, to harness this power responsibly, we must be proactive. This is a call to action for institutions, repositories, and supervisors to build a framework that encourages innovation while protecting integrity. These are next slide, please. This one is an example of a Visual Mind AI, and next one is also. And conclusion, next slide. Yeah. Ultimately, the goal is augmentation, not replacement. By leveraging tools like Visual Mind AI, we can elevate the quality of research and empower a new generation of scholars to communicate their findings with unprecedented clarity and impact. The future. The ETD as an interactive tool for discovery, not just a static document. And our responsibility is to ensure careful oversight to mitigate risks of plagiarism and over-reliance. That's all from my side. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Carr. Thank you for your presentation. Next, we will invite Rachel Woodwork from University of Michigan to talk about automation of content detection in PDF dissertations.
Thanks, Ruth. So yeah, my name is Rachel Woodbrook. As Catherine said, I'm not a member of this community or administrator per se. I'm a librarian as well, but I work for the University of Michigan Library in the group that runs our institutional repositories for both documents and data, and so we do steward dissertations as part of that. And I'm speaking briefly today about a project I co-supervised with my colleague Peter Serta on a student assistant helping us to explore this automation. So within Deep Blue documents, we have over 50,000 dissertation and thesis PDFs from the early 20th century through to today. Historical items are restricted to campus use when we have not secured author permission or identified them as being in the public domain. But dissertations are also our most requested items, and we receive multiple requests each week for access from across the globe. So we do reach out manually to authors where we can when we get requests, and we do review them for release based on a process set up in partnership with our copyright office. But right now, that's just manual on a case-by-case basis. So this summer, we explored the possibility of automating content detection of copyright statements in these PDFs with a great student assistant, actually a recent graduate, Aurelia Hudak, but she used various different Python-based software and packages to create a semi-automated workflow to bulk process the first 15 and last 15 pages of the PDFs, which had great variability in both their OCR and PDF quality. I'll put the full list of programs she used in the chat in a minute and what she used them for. But I will also note that Aurelia was great. She had some experience with Python in the classroom before this, but she had not used it in practical application, which I think speaks both to perhaps the usability of the tools, also definitely to her skill and acuity. And then very briefly, the script evaluates the PDF to see if it's already OCR'd. If not, it will generate it. It scans the first 15 and last 15 pages using exact and fuzzy matching for various iterations of copyright notice. And we also check that list with our copyright office. And then it logs a yes, no result, as well as a few other pieces of information for each file. Next slide. So because of the progression of copyright in the US and the way it works, copyright statements were generally required before 1978. So we had her look only at items up to 1977. There are about 13,000 of those. The code overall takes about 2 hours to run, and we now have a second version of the script. Here, I think we said that there's a sample of 853 items, but we did do an additional round of sort of randomizing and drawing an additional sample of 450 items. There's still only one false negative, which is really good. False positives were somewhat higher. We introduced some additional ways to the copyright statement could be phrased. So now we have 19 false positives as well as 45 items flagged as needing manual review, but we're a lot less concerned about that than we are about not about missing a copyright statement when it is there. So basically this indicates a likely need of manual review for items flagged as either containing copyright or uncertain. And we did end up having in our limitations to exclude items from the 1947 to 1952, about 1,000 items due to poor quality PDFs. We also, surprisingly, had to exclude the copyright symbol from the search because it was giving so many false positives, and because we didn't find any instances where that was the only indication of copyright, which was interesting to me. So following this project, I put impact up here that there's potentially a basis for considering releasing items that are out of copyright. But beyond that, I think this also gives us a sense of how common copyright statements were in our university's dissertations prior to 1978, and also a basis on which to extrapolate how much time it might take to assess all of our PDFs for OCR potentially, which would be a necessary first step for remediating PDFs throughout the repository for accessibility. And I'll also note finally that Aurelia's code is almost finished and it'll be released on GitHub and as well as in our data repository when it's finalized. Thank you.
That is so exciting. Thank you, Rachel, for your presentation. And that sets a very strong conclusion to today's Flash Talk. I think all of us did so well with the content and with the timing. And although these are speed talks, I think it's very information rich. So we will go back to that. I personally will. I think they're so interesting. Kristin, what do you think? We have still time for questions too.
Yeah, let's open the floor to questions. And Ruth, do you have a slide that shows the names of each speaker and their titles so that if there's a specific question, folks can reference that? Oh, it's so small. Can you put it into slideshow mode? Perfect. Yeah, now I can see them.
Thank you for troubleshooting. Yep, sounds good. I see Liz raised her hand. Hi, Liz.
Hi, my question is about the non-traditional theses and dissertations. I'm assuming that your digital repository will take different multimedia.
Yeah, we use DSpace repository, and it'll take any file format as long as it's in a fixed form.
Okay, because we've had some issues about of how media might or might not go into ours. So that sounds like a really nice solution. Thank you.
think there was a question in the chat earlier too.
Yeah, I'm sifting through them and see.
Are you looking for Ed's?
Yes.
Regarding AI, how many of the issues discussed would be addressed if one replaces AI with a collaborator? In other words, if there is a question about using AI for task X, the question could be rewritten to be a question about a collaborator assisting with task X.
Thank you, Teri.
Mm-hmm.
So Kim, I think that was in reference to your
I don't
slides.
think I understand the question. I'm sorry.
So if you're wondering whether AI could be used for something, if you just change the question, could another person do so and so, right? As opposed to the author of the work. You know, think of AI as just another person.
Okay, so we have certain schools or departments that allow like a copy editor to review a document, which I guess would be similar to using Grammarly. We allow students to use a chapter or up to 3 chapters of various published journals, articles that could be, they need to be the first or second author if they're using it, but may not be the only author. And again, since my school doesn't have to make the decision, it's really based on the department. And it would also be based on, you know, is it data science or computer science because maybe they're talking about AI, so they needed to use AI to write the document. And but if this is English and it's more of a creative kind of discipline, maybe then it depends on the subject matter. So yeah, I really can't. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I shouldn't be. And I tried to make that clear when I did my presentation. I just know what's out there and what I can present to people and allow those departments to make that decision.
Yeah, I think just it helps to sometimes think about existing policies that talk about these issues with other people, you know, if you're thinking about AI. The other question I had to do with the non-traditional works. I'm hoping that if someone submits a non-traditional work, that they do it in a way that follows standards that are amenable to preservation, as opposed to using some tool that will disappear in half a year and then no one can make use of whatever's there.
Yeah, for sure. So that's part of our consultation whenever somebody has something that's outside of a PDF, basically. And most of the things have come in as websites. And so we've been just doing like web archiving kind of process. But when it's embedded video, like that will cause another kind of consideration in how best to get that capture and everything like that. We haven't had anything like ArcGIS, which has been very difficult for us to preserve the past. So, but every single time, basically, we come up with a preservation plan for the content. That makes sense.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for the great questions and discussions. We have 1 minute left. Any last comment for the Flash Talks? Wonderful. We want to have a round of applause for all the wonderful presenters for your for your talks. And Teri, I will turn it to you to conclude today's session.
Okay, thank you so much, Ruth. So thank you again, everyone, for attending this session. This was so informational with all of these flash talks, and everybody kept on time. So just amazing. So the conference will take a short 10-minute break. And then we will resume at 7:40 with our final 2 concurrent sessions. Session 15, National ETD Repositories in G20 countries. And session 16, Sharing Collaborative Approaches and Community Insights on ETD Management in Canada. And so the management in Canada will be in the breakout room, and the ETD repositories will be in the main room, and we will see you in 10 minutes. And then also, hopefully, you'll be staying for our closing ceremonies as well. She'll be in the main room. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teri, for coordinating, and we will be seeing you in the next session.
All right.